What is going on, everybody? I finally have accomplished a milestone, in my opinion. That's beating a player with more than 2,000 ELO on chess.com. It's a new acquaintance that I have newly acquainted with. We played 4 games, and he spanked me the first 3. Hands down, way better player. The third game that we played, I will say that I played phenomenally. I more or less had a slight advantage the whole game until there was only one minor piece left, and then he just outplayed me. End game, he schooled me. He handed my ass to me. Like I said, he's a much better player than me. I'm not trying to come off like I owned this guy or anything, but I had a real good position on him. He didn't really have too much going for him, and then right here, I made the mistake of jumping my knight. He missed the move bishop to d1, and then he could have gobbled up my pawns. But even though he missed that move and I got all my pawns on dark squares, it didn't matter. He still outplayed me, and he took it to victory. But this is not the point of the discussion here. The real point is the game that we played, and I got a victory out of it. So here's how that went down. He played d4, and I'm trying to learn the semi-Slav because I'm a Karo con player. So I played c6, and he played c4, and I played d5, and then he brought out his kingside knight. And I really don't know much of the lines here. I just know that one of the main book moves is to capture the c-pawn. So I did that, and he played a move that I had never seen before, moving the b-pawn. I think that was to open up a file on the A. So I captured it. I took the pawn. So it was a pawn up here, but he had more open lanes. And then I came out and pinned his knight. Not really, because the e-pawn is still there. But I guess the best move from here would be to put my bishop on f5 instead. So he brought his knight out to back it up. So if I captured, he could just replace it. And I closed out my bishop by pushing e6. And then he pushed forward and took the center, since I gave it to him, with e4. And now the knight technically is pinned. And I could have snagged the... I really couldn't have snagged the pawn, but we'll get there. So I developed a knight, thinking that if he pushed his e-pawn, I could just put my knight on d5, and then he'd have a backwards pawn on d4 he would have to deal with the rest of the game. But he was smart. He put his queen out to c2, protecting that pawn. That was under attack in case if, I did some exchanges. It wouldn't be protected anymore. But here I started thinking, I'm like, okay, well, the only thing guarding that knight now is the other knight, and that d-pawn is pretty weak. So what I did was I brought my dark squared bishop out, pinning his other knight. So now if I capture the knight over on the king side with my light squared bishop, he would have to recapture with a pawn. And then after he recaptured, I would be able to scoop up the queen pawn. And he came and defended his king pawn with the bishop, which I think that's kind of a mistake, maybe. So I took advantage of what I just spoke about. I captured the knight, and he can't capture with the other. He would have to capture with the pawn, which he did. And that allowed me to scoop up the pawn, and now I'm also attacking the rook in the corner. He attacked my queen, and here was my first blunder. I had like a +3 advantage, and I should have just brought my queen all the way back to d8. But I figured I was up material, and I would just exchange off. And that was a big mistake, because that just brought me back right to zeros. Took the knight with check. He recaptured, and then I brought back my queen. Literally almost even here now, according to the computer. Threw away all the advantage I had built up. He moved over the rook to attack my G pawn, and if he attacks my knight, or if I move my knight, he's got double attack on G. So I got a big problem I got to solve. Computer says since the knight is covered, just to push my G pawn up one. I brought my other knight over as a different solution. And then he brought his queen over now, attacking my B pawn now. And I'm no longer able to castle kingside because that cuts through and hits f8. So I'm thinking, all right, I should castle queenside now. And if I move my queen here, it's basically just offering an exchange. If he captures, I can recapture with the knight. Decent position. But I still have to worry about that loose G pawn. So what he did was move his queen to D6, really putting on the pressure. So I took the advantage and I castled queenside while I could, and that also set me up for a discovered attack on his queen if I move my knight. And my queen is now attacking his B pawn too, so he's got a couple things he's got to deal with. He brought his bishop in, attacking my queen, and this is where I messed up again. Had a nice advantage, threw it all away right here. I took the pawn, just getting material hungry, just trying to get everything down, eliminate material. My best move from here was moving my knight out of the way and discovered attack on his queen instantly. I planned on doing that after I got the pawn because I figured on top of attacking the pawn, now I'm attacking his light square bishop too is hanging. I do understand that my A7 pawn is hanging right now, but I figured I can save the day, and if he takes the pawn, he'd be threatening rook A8. I can just move my knight to B6, therefore my rook's attacking his queen, and that knight is covering the A8 square temporarily. Understood his bishop is attacking it, but he can't take it because of the whole queen deal. Well, I didn't think of one thing. When he took the pawn, yes, that prevents the rook from checking me, and that attacks the queen, but he had the move queen to E7, threatening, queen capture B7 checkmate. And by moving my knight here, that blocks my queen from protecting the B pawn. A better move from here is if I just would have put my knight on B8, because it still would have been a discovered attack on his queen, would have prevented a check with his rook, and also allowed my queen to protect the B7 pawn. But thank God he did not see that queen move to E7, because he had almost no time. He had under a minute, and after he had moved there, he was down to 9 seconds. And here, after I took the bishop, he had 9 seconds left. This is where resignation happened, because now I'm double attacking the bishop. He's only got one defender. He's got no other piece he can bring in to defend the bishop, because my knight covers the A4 square, and his rook would be the only piece to come in, but the knight covers that square. And if he moves the bishop, I'm threatening checkmate with queen D1. So all around, just everything lined up perfect for me. Couple of blunders, I threw away the advantage I had built up a couple times, but I got super lucky, and he was a great sport. And I appreciate you, sir, blurring out your name just to protect your identity. I don't feel comfortable because I record every chess game I play, but I don't record chess games with friends, which I didn't hear. And also, I don't use friends for material, but I'm making an exception here because it's a first for me. But you spanked my ass 3 times, and I appreciate you. Catch you on the next.